Yeah, we can kick it off. And I think, let me just introduce myself. I'm Meg Meredith, Grants Manager at PEDIGREE Foundation. We've got a full program for you today, so thanks for taking the time to join us. Yay, Misty, you got in. Amazing. And then can you do the same for Jeffrey? And then just to go to the agenda.
Can you see it?
Perfect. Here's today's agenda. So we stand by you and our commitment to getting more dogs adopted. Deb Fair, our executive director, will welcome you, and I'll introduce you to our host and our panelists in today's session. Next, we'll hear from Kristen Hassan on the recently launched toolkits, adoption toolkits, and we'll get into an interactive session with our panelists. Finally, we have a Q&A session where attendees can engage with the panelists on any questions, okay? So let me turn it over to Deb Fair, our executive director.
Hi, everyone. If I haven't met you, I'm meeting you now. I'm Deb Fair, Executive Director for PEDIGREE Foundation. I'm super excited about this webinar that Meg and Kristen have pulled together. If you haven't seen our adoption toolkit, which we pushed out about a month ago, it's the Adoption Superhighway Toolkit. A lot of great information in there that can help shelters and rescues right now, as well as the Spark to Basic Toolkit, which we'll be talking about today. We know that times are very challenging right now in the shelter and rescue community. We've seen the most recent SAC Q3 report where, dog intake, the numbers have increased 2.5% from January through September, and adoptions are down. So we know that you all are struggling. We hear that from you. We see that in the grant applications that we receive every day, the ones that Meg has gone through. And we hope that what we present today helps you spark some creative ideas of how you can increase adoption, how you can engage your communities to participate and be advocates for all of you. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Meg. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Deb. I'm super excited about our host and our panelists today. Our host, Kristen Hassan, is the founder of Outcomes for Pets, Outcomes Consulting, and has been in animal welfare for over 20 years. Kristen has been a fantastic partner to the foundation, helping build resources to improve adoption rates. And then we have a wealth of knowledge in our panelists. Please join me in welcoming Mira Horwitz from Lucky Dog Animal Rescue, and then Misty Valenta from Williamson County Regional Animal Shelter, Jeffrey Zerwick from Berkeley Humane, and Michelle Figueroa from Pima Animal Care Center. So Kristen, let's just get started.
Thank you so much, Meg, and thanks, Deb. And huge thanks to PEDIGREE Foundation for your commitment to big dogs. We know that not only is stray dog intake going up, but dog euthanasia has risen rapidly. We've seen an 88% increase according to Shelter Animals Count data since 2021. And we know that so many of you are feeling hopeless, scared, terrible. And I think we're all here today to provide you support, to help you hang in there, and to help just continue to build a community of animal welfare professionals and volunteers who are not ready to give up. We're actually going to dig in, and when the going gets tough, we're going to get going. So with that in mind, we invited guests who really have done extraordinary work. You heard a little bit about them, but I want to give them a chance to introduce themselves. And I'm hoping that when you introduce yourself, panelists, if you could tell us like what you think is unique in this moment, and you could interpret that however you want. So Misty, why don't you kick it off?
Sure. Thank you, Kristen. My name is Misty Valenta. I'm the director of the Williamson County Regional Animal Shelter in Georgetown, Texas. That's just north of Austin, Texas. And we're I'll call us a mid-sized, humble shelter. We serve about 7,000 animals a year with almost a $3 million budget. And when we're fully staffed, about 40 staff members. We have worked hard and tried new programs to be innovative. We don't have a strong community organizational support system. So it's up to us to be creative and engage the community to come out and help. Kristen, you gave me a question to answer, and
yeah, what do you think? I mean, you've been in this long enough. What do you think is different about this moment than in previous moments we've had?
I think something interesting about this moment, and I'll be interested to hear what the other panelists say, is with the pandemic, we had a big shift in staffing. All the way from, I took the director role during the pandemic, so from all the way up to down, and it's hard to kind of explain where we were pre-pandemic to the folks who have kind of grown up in animal welfare during the pandemic. So there's, I think, a wealth of knowledge to just disperse out there.
Yeah, I think staffing is huge, like new staff coming to the field. Great, thanks. Mira?
Hi, my name is Mira Horowitz. I'm the founder and CEO of Lucky Dog Animal Rescue. I think unlike the other organizations on this call, Lucky Dog has our primary adoption focus is 100% foster based. We're in the Northern Virginia area, and we do about 3,000 adoptions, 2,500 to 3,000 adoptions. And our first year of hitting 3,000 adoptions was actually 3,500 in 2020. And we have not returned to pre-pandemic levels of adoptions. Pre-pandemic, we never broke 2,000. At the same time, we are definitely seeing a shift more towards cats. We're doing a lot more cats now than we ever have done before, and less dogs, more smaller dogs, I'm sure, as most of you are experiencing. But we're still doing pretty well with like the 35 pound to 50 pound dogs. So for us, being able to help the big dogs not only turns on being able to find adopters, but we have to find fosters for them as well. So it's kind of a double whammy for our organization.
Thanks, Mira. Jeffrey?
Hi, good morning. Thanks for putting this together. I'm so excited about this conversation. I think it's really timely. So my name is Jeffrey Zerwick, and I'm the executive director at Berkeley Humane in the San Francisco Bay Area. And I think what makes us a little unique is that this is a very crowded market for animal welfare, and it's good that we have a lot of strong organizations in the area that all work really well together. However, Berkeley Humane is one of the smaller of the shelters, and which means that we have to work really hard to get noticed. It's a very crowded field. And so what we've been seeing lately is where puppies and kittens used to fly out the door, that's no longer the case. And our adopters are coming to us and they're saying, we're really looking for an older dog, or a senior cat, or a 2-year-old dog that's already been trained. They are interested in having a pet, but recognize that they don't have the time or maybe the resources it takes to invest in that pet from the beginning to an adult stage. And so that's definitely having an impact on our model, Animals with Us Longer, which is both challenging and also really exciting.
Thanks so much. Michelle?
Hi, I'm Michelle. I am at Pima Animal Care Center here in Tucson, Arizona. We are the only open shelter in southern Arizona. We take in about 20,000 animals a year, with about 11 to 12,000 animals being adopted. I think for me, the struggle, and the unique thing is that I agree with Jeffrey, puppies and kittens are just staying behind, and it doesn't make any sense. And I agree with Misty about we don't have that sense of urgency for new staff coming in. They can't make the connection between what is happening currently and what has happened in the past. And I think that's a struggle for the upper management team to be able to express what that means and what it really means. So there's that. And one of the things that that is unique for us is that we are so far out of town, and meaning like 10 miles from the center of town, which that's a lot for some people. So we have to remove the box completely and not have a box that we're thinking in. So we have to then turn around and go out into the community to those events that are happening. Like there's a tamale festival here in town. So we're going to those kinds of events because those people are interested in those things, right? So we have to go to them to get animals seen and adopted out. And the other thing is taking advantage of what's happening nationally. Like we have the Kelsey and Taylor, this phenomenon of a football player and a pop star. So be creative. Take that into, your adoptions and what can you do with that? So that's what we do here at PEMA.
I'm going to go back to Jeffrey quickly. And Jeffrey, I feel frustrated with the animal welfare movement right now because I think I joined I think it's called Puppy Swap, one of the puppy sales sites. And I filled out some information. This was 4 months ago. To date, they're texting me constantly saying, we've got these dogs in, come see us, we're open today, special sale. They're marketing to me all the time. They're making it so easy if I wanted to buy a dog. What do you think, do you see this trend as well, that animal welfare is kind of getting in its own way? And if so, are you all doing anything to address that?
Kristen, I don't like to hear that you're frustrated. I think this is a time to be very optimistic. We're not, I've heard a lot of people say lately that they feel like animal welfare has been set back 10 years because of the pandemic and everything else. We're not the same organization we were 10 years ago. We know so much more now. We have pivoted about 200 times in the last 10 years. And so we will continue to do so. In our market, I'm not necessarily seeing the puppy sales and overly aggressive marketing from private entities. I know that we're doing our best in the Bay Area to try to get noticed. It is very hard in a market that only puts things on the news when there's harm or crime, and so we're actually seeing more paid advertising from shelters. So if you turn on the local, national public radio, you're just as likely to hear an ad for a nonprofit animal welfare organization as you would, any other business. But that is expensive. And the other thing that we see that people will turn out for is fee-waived adoptions, which is fantastic. That is also, a hit to the budget. And so we're having to get more creative in making sure if we're going to have paid advertising, that we find a sponsor to do it with us. If we're going to have a free adoption weekend, we need to find a sponsor to help underwrite that. And that is how we're trying to stay on top of our budget and also get as many animals into loving homes as possible.
That's super helpful. And I think that's echoed by Carrie in the chat, who said we need funding for technology to keep up. As nonprofits, it's really hard to find funding to keep up with IT needs. And that's just a reminder to all of you. We want you to engage in conversation. So if you have thoughts or answers to any of these questions, please jump in. Mira, I want to go to you because you mentioned small dogs. And if I could get rid of one term in animal welfare right now, I think it would be big dog. I think that term almost has been put upon us by rent restrictions, housing restrictions. And it's like, if we keep affirming it, there may become less and less room for big dogs. What do you see as an organization that has led the way in helping the animals that actually need life-saving? What do you see as the future for big dogs? See, I just said it. What do you see as the future for dogs that people call big dogs? And you're muted if you're talking.
Thank you. Before I answer that, I actually want to go back to your question to Jeffrey and say that we actually have a huge marketing program to anyone that has submitted an application. They get 2 to 3 emails from us a week, and they say, here are all the animals arriving on transport that are coming to the DC metro area that you can meet. And then they get here are all the animals that are attending our 2 adoption events. Here are the locations and who is going to be there. And then if they are a puppy person that has indicated they want a puppy, they get a list of all the puppies that are coming. And if they are a person interested specifically in a cat, they get the dedicated cat list. And those go out every single week. So, and it's not that we actually, that's all done by a volunteer. So, and the only investment in technology is we did have to pay for a mail merge with our G Suite. But other than that, it's a pretty simple mail merge and it's a pretty simple template. And there's actually even a formula that you can use where if you create a spreadsheet within Google Sheets, it will auto populate all the photographs from your website. So you don't even have to like download and upload the pictures. It just auto does it all. And I don't know how to do it, but I can get instructions for anyone that wants it from the people on my team that know how to do it. Going to your question about let's just call them larger dogs, dogs that are bigger than the small dogs. For us in our area, we do have a lot of weight restrictions for apartment people. But we also have a number of people that are they live in apartments, condos, or townhomes, and they are afraid to get a bigger dog because they have this idea in their head that big dog means big house, needs big yard. And what we really try to talk to them about, and luckily a lot of my volunteer adoption counselors are bigger dog owners, and so they can speak to their personal experience. But if you have, if you're in an apartment, a lot of them often will have like a dog park, or, the communities have a dog park. We also are huge proponents of mental engagement. So snuffle mats, puzzle toys, all of that kind of stuff that you can do in your home. And then we also are in an area where there is a lot of doggy daycares and dog walkers, et cetera. So we really try to give people like, okay, so your physical living environment may not be huge, but if you provide these outlets for your animal, they're going to be tired when they come home and they're not going to need a lot of space because they're just going to sleep, right? So I think a lot of times it's educating them that just because you have a big yard, you put your bigger dog out in your big yard, they're just going to stand at the door and wait for you to come play with them, right? The big yard doesn't solve the problem in and of itself. So that's really what we've been trying to push.
Thank you so much. Does anyone want to add to that?
I'll say that we have a lot of condos in Austin, and so we'll get folks coming in and wanting to adopt. And we had the best success story. One of you'll know these dogs, they're bouncing off the walls, they're just chaotic in the kennel. A guy who lives in a condo, like really attached to Riku, but he jogged 3 miles a day. So it's about the lifestyle more than, those 4 walls containing you.
Thank you. Michelle, I want to turn to you because you all take in about 20,000 animals a year. Most of that is actually larger dogs. And you've maintained an adoption rate close to before the pandemic. You've maintained a 90% live release rate. How are you guys doing it, despite the fact that you don't have a huge budget, you don't have a huge staff? Like, how are you still maintaining what was happening before the pandemic? Because so many shelters are saying they just can't do it.
I think there's a lot of things that go into this. We recruit as many volunteers as we possibly can, but we're very kind of strategic on volunteers. Like, there's things that we need to get done, right? You guys were talking about technology. We're talking about how to, radio stations, invite volunteers from those organizations that in essence, when they're volunteering, they're going to be proud of what they're volunteering here. So they're going to turn around and, you know what, I can create this app. I can do this for you for technology. You know what, I'm going to give you guys a free shout out on the radio station. So having those volunteers that have those, passageways into the things that we need is key. The second thing is we go out into the community, and whatever event is happening, no matter how large or how small, we're taking animals to them. And even if it's hanging out for an hour or two, just getting exposure, that is one of the key things. There was one event where we didn't really think that it was going to be successful. It was just like kind of an arts and crafts in an area we didn't really go to before. And we took 12 puppies to, medium adult dogs. And we came back with one dog. And the thing for us was wow, we're not reaching those people that we're not thinking about. And I think it's know your town, know the culture you live in, what speak to them in their terms and what they know. And I think that's the success that we're having. We also have large events here. Those are successful, but as we all know, you can only have 1 to 2 large events a year budget wise, and it's exhausting. So it's just going out into the community and attending every event you possibly can and give those ones that you're not thinking about a shot. And it may surprise you.
I want to ask, that's so helpful. I think all 3 of those suggestions are really great. And the one that really struck me is volunteers. And all of you have maintained volunteer programs when, you know, my work is to travel to really big, hard shelters, and I see no volunteers. It's really shocking when you've been, before the pandemic, you would have seen 25 people, and now there's no one. I want to ask this to all of anyone who wants to respond, but what do you think has happened with volunteer programs, and what do we need to do to get them back on track?
I'll start with that one. We only have 8 staff, so we're heavily volunteer based. And for us to do our Sunday adoption events, we have about 100 volunteers on site every Sunday. What we have found is it's not so hard getting the first time, second time, third time volunteers. It's getting volunteers to take on that next level of ownership, right? So it's getting the more experienced volunteers has been our struggle, or those willing to commit more than like 2 hours a month, which we really need for our adoption programs. And we have just started for the first time since the pandemic to really start onboarding those volunteers. And we're just having to think differently about how we're asking for them. We are now inviting them to come and personally shadow us at adoption events before they even sign up for the training and all of those things to kind of get them on the hook. So I feel like you need to be more personalized in your outreach once you kind of learn who, like, once they sign up, yes, they need a lot more kind of individual. Oh, we're so glad you signed up. Here are all the great things you can do. Do you want to talk to me about them? Do you want to come visit me and see them? And not, you know, like you just have to really pull them in so much harder now.
You know, I was at an adoption event not too long ago, and there were 2 very well-resourced shelters there with their mobile units filled with, you know, the most amazing, adorable animals ever. And it was so interesting to watch both of these programs because one of them ended up sending every single animal home, and the other organization only sent home 1 or 2. And the difference was not that these volunteers weren't amazing at animal care. One group, they weren't really people. And so you saw one group really hustling. They were chatting with people. It's almost like they were being measured on engagement, not necessarily who went home. And the other group was just very quiet, stayed behind the table, didn't talk to people unless they were approached. And I felt so bad for those animals. I wanted to move them over to the other van and so that they could go home too. And so I think it's not only a challenge to find the volunteers help that we need, is to find the volunteers who really love people and are willing to engage in the public to help get those animals home.
And
I love that. That's a great story.
Just to piggyback off of Jeffrey, one of the things also is that the volunteers doing these things need to know about your organization, because if they're just there to do adoptions, the community wants to know you as a whole. And so they're going to ask you about licensing. They're going to ask you about your foster team. And if volunteers that are running those adoption events don't know those answers, you may have cost that a relationship where they will never engage again. So the volunteers that are running those programs need to know your organization as a whole.
Misty?
Yeah, I agree with everything that everyone has said. And I'll also add that I think sometimes staff have a fear of volunteers. And so if a volunteer will step forward and be like, I want to do this new program, I want to do this, there's this like sudden fear and wanting to say no for some reason. And I don't know why that is. And so I encourage my staff to when they see those sparks, they need to turn those sparks into flames, because those flames will build fires and build community. And so don't be afraid of your volunteers. Welcome them in.
That's a
I want to
great.
make I want to make like a toolkit off of this webinar. You guys are so smart. It's really refreshing. I'm feeling less frustrated, Jeffrey, already. So working. I want to get to something that is really controversial for some, which is this idea that we can't have our volunteer programs because advocates ruin it for everybody. And that there's these advocates that are so abusive and mean and horrible. And because of them, it's hard to really let anyone else in. And I've seen this across the country as I'm in shelters with very small or non-existent volunteer programs cite just how inappropriate and abusive people are. And I'm not discounting that there are a very small number of advocates who shouldn't even be called advocates. They should be called bullies. But the vast majority, that's not what I see. And I'm wondering, like, how do we help these people who are coming to the field who have not been doing it as long? Because for us, we've critical advocacy has been a part of our work forever. You know, it's critics that have made us better in many cases. But how do we teach this up and coming generation that critical advocacy is kind of part of the deal when you're dealing with life and death? And I'm a little stuck there. I haven't been very successful, so I'm curious what you all think.
I think it takes a very special person to start that conversation. Like, you need to have the right person in your organization engaging with those advocates, and looking for the common ground between them. Because a lot of those conversations that I have, there's miscommunication, there's a misunderstanding, and by the end, we're not agreeing on everything, but we have found something to agree on and work on together. And it just takes that one piece that we can work on together that makes each of us seem more human.
I think that's right. What I try to work with my staff on, both when working with volunteers, but also even when they have, conflicts with each other on some of these issues, is we have to assume people have good intentions. It's really easy to assume that people are coming at you with bad intentions, but we're all there. The volunteers are there, the staff is there because we care about animals and we want to save lives. And we all agree on that basic premise. So if you start with that premise and you take a step back and you talk to each side about, okay, so what are you trying to accomplish, right? How can I help you accomplish that? And how can we all work together to accomplish that? As long as the thing that the advocate is trying to accomplish is in alignment with your mission, you should be able to pull it all together. If they're outside your mission, if they're trying to get your mission to change, then in my case, what I do is we have the conversation, like, maybe we're not the right organization for you because that's actually not our mission. But that's a great thing to be doing, and maybe here's some other places you should be looking at.
I think there's a high percentage of constructive criticism in our realm of thing, in our world. And I think if we really dive into what they're criticizing or what they're advocating for, we may find some truth in there, and it's a portion of it. But if we look at that and then reevaluate what we're doing, we could learn from that. It's all about learning from each other. And this advocate, also, we turn it around, and if there's something they want to do and we're unsure about, we give them the lead in it. Okay, we're going to do a pilot. You have 2 weeks, 30 days. Let's see what you can do. But you have to live within these barriers of what we're allowing you to do. If it's successful, then we will look at it and we will either implement it or we will adjust. But sometimes giving them the lead, they will understand where we're coming from, or we may actually be like, oh, it was actually a great idea. With some adjustments, we're good. So I think it's a give and take for both sides.
Jeffrey, do you have anything to add?
It's tough to add. These guys are so good. I think sometimes when we get into conflict, we're focused on how did we get here, right? And what are we going to do about it? But if we take a step back, uh, every organization usually starts out with a pretty clear mission and values, but are those being communicated to the volunteers at volunteer orientation? Are they getting the handbook? Are they signing off on that stuff? Are the managers reinforcing it? Where does that behavior start? And I think that I love the diversity of opinions. I think we absolutely need it to be successful. But as you guys are saying, as Michelle and Mira were saying, is it in line with our values? Are we the right organization for that person? But I take responsibility for how did we start? Where did this relationship begin? And I've got to own that to make sure there's a through line all the way to someone's successful volunteer career with us, that they understand who we are and what we stand for, and really what makes sense for our relationship with the community, that they're here to add value to that, and not take us in a direction that isn't healthy for the organization or helpful for the animals.
I think that's a really good point, because it's a perfect lead into what I wanted to ask about next, which is barriers. And I think Mira's really helped me kind of get beyond the conversation about barriers into something different. But oftentimes when we have committed volunteers, we come up against this issue of who deserves to actually own the pet. And we come up against the issue of volunteers who are more comfortable caring for the pets in shelter than sending them home. And I find it more complicated, I think, maybe than we sometimes talk about it, because whenever I foster, I'm super picky about where my animals go, yet I preach open adoptions, barrier-free all the time. I understand it's complicated. How are all of you kind of navigating this balance between getting your animals into good homes, but knowing that if you have too many restrictions, they're going to face shelter decline. They could be euthanized because they fall apart mentally in the shelter. Like, how are you balancing those two things?
Yeah, and I'll add a little nuance for us because the animals are in foster care. So the fosters do kind of feel like, well, I can just hold on to this animal until it gets adopted. I don't care. And then we have to kind of gently remind them like, well, actually, there's animals we would love to put in your home with you, right? So let's kind of move them along. All of our adoption counselors are volunteers. All of our fosters are volunteers, and they do all of the matching for us. And so we do have to manage their expectations of they want to have value in the conversation, and they want to feel like they're not just like handing out dogs and cats, because then what are they adding? Why are they investing all this time? So we work really hard to try to get them to think about you're having a conversation to help set them up for success rather than evaluate them. And if you really feel like what they're looking for is not what they're actually like looking for physically, then we want to try to steer the conversation. But at the end of the day, what we tell our fosters and our adoption counselors is you need to, if you're going to say that someone can't adopt your foster dog or your AC dog or cat, you have to have a clear, articulable, I can't say that word, reason that you are going to say they can't have the pet. It cannot be, I don't like them, right? You can't just not like them, because I tell some stories of people that I've adopted to where literally the human being got on my last nerve, drove me batty crazy. Like I really wanted to slap them by the end of the conversation, and they are phenomenal pet owners, right? I don't have to like them. They don't have to be my friend. They have to care and love for their animal, and having that conversation and talking to the volunteers about that. Like, do you think the animal will be loved and cared for at the end of the day? You don't have to have a beer with them, but that animal has to be loved and cared for. That's the question.
Yeah, my staff are instructed if they're in a situation that they're unsure of, they are supposed to ask what if and let's try. And those are the steps to get to that creativity, to problem solve. How do we give them the resources they need so that we're setting them up for success? What programs do we offer? And if they go through the what if let's try and they can't figure it out, then they call a more senior staff member to brainstorm with. And if that senior staff member is like, no, this should be a no, well, then it's a no, and there's a clear reason. But we should always try what if, let's try first.
Jeffrey or Michelle?
It's hard to top that. It brings me to a conversation I had with my mom a few months ago. I asked her, what do you think the barrier is of people just say no to adopters just because of what they dress, what they drive, all of those things? And my mom said, well, it's sort of like having a child. You can't just keep your foster parent, the child, at home because you don't trust no one. She said you have to hope that the foster parent or the adoption counselor is making the best decision for the animal. And so you have to let that foster animal go home to someone that, is a matchmaking decision. It's about matching the dog with that home, not because they have an 8-bedroom home, not because it's a 2-story home, not because they're a lawyer, because that they can offer that animal things that the shelter can't. And she said, and it's like it's like leaving your child, leave your home. You're gonna hope that all those things fall into place. And I was like, oh, well, that makes sense. Like, why are we not thinking about those things? It's about the matchmaking. It's about what's best for that animal. What is going to change the environment for that animal, and the shelter isn't. That home will. Even if it's a 1-bedroom home, it's going to change that environment for that animal.
Yeah, well said, Michelle. And I'm glad you brought up trust, because I think we've been doing conversational adoptions for a decade. And we do start with a place of trust. And it's really about trying to understand this particular adopter and how much experience do they have as a pet owner, and what pet are they looking at, and how do we make that match and set them up for success, as Misty said. And so I think our team is really focused, and our adopters our fosters and volunteers are focused on the fact that if we can't find great loving homes for 30 animals this weekend, we can't go out and support our other partners on next week who have animals in need of medical care, who have animals in need of behavior care that we are uniquely qualified to help. And so we don't have barriers, because we are trying our best to do what's right by the animal and get them in a home that we think is going to be fantastic.
Thank you. How are you? I want to come back to that actually in a minute to ask you about sort of the adoptions where people struggle the most. But before I do, I'm curious, how are you all, when you are managing your frontline staff? And I can imagine that just like everybody, your turnover at that frontline adoption counselor. And I know, Mira, yours are mostly volunteers. But for those of you that have those staff, and you're retraining constantly open adoptions, right? And then you'll read, I go to a lot of shelters and I'll read their adoption application, and the director will be like, what the hell happened? Like, there's all these barriers in my adoption application. How are you all managing kind of an ongoing basis not to allow these, must have a fenced in yard, must have every pet perfectly up to date on everything with all vaccines, et cetera, et cetera. How are you managing to not have a barriers kind of creeping back in with your frontline staff?
We have a 12-question survey that people fill out. And again, it's just trying to understand what their history has been as a pet owner, and what their particular circumstances, so that we can help match an animal with them. We don't have a lot of turnover. Our adoption counselors, both volunteer and staff, have been with us for a long time. Maybe that's because they are sitting in a pretty positive place, and having really healthy conversations with potential adopters. But we don't require home checks. We haven't for a decade. We don't worry about the fence size. We just make sure that someone knows what they're getting themselves into. And then we also follow up with them. So they're getting an email the following Monday, they're getting a phone call 3 days later asking how things are going. And we, our commitment is to that animal for life. because we'd like to stay with that. We've been around 125 years. This shelter is not going anywhere, and we have additional resources to provide that family. So we don't look at it as a transaction. It is a long-term relationship.
That's so awesome. Are you hiring?
I'll let you know if somebody leaves.
That's amazing. I really love that. And I love that your staff are staying. And I think you bring up an important point that like we have some control over that. And this nihilism, this like hopelessness, it doesn't make people want to stay in an organization. Misty, I think you have embodied that more than maybe anyone I know. You have been through such hard this last year. Do you want to talk about just kind of what you all have faced and how you kept your staff positive?
Sure. So we're the largest open intake shelter in our area, including Austin, right now, even though we only serve Williamson County. So there are shelters out there who were open intake at one point who are not anymore. And people are desperate for resources. And, our name is out there in a pretty positive way. And so our staff has to deal with a lot more than they used to, because a lot more people are asking for help, even outside of our area that we can help with. So yeah, keeping staff upbeat is that's job priority number one for me, because we're nothing without them. And, we got to acknowledge the tough work, but we also have to really celebrate those wins. And something that I have with my team, the whole shelter team, whoever wants to be on this chat, we have a Teams chat that is just open at all times. So we can celebrate in there. We can ask for help in there. We can talking about barriers. If someone's struggling with an adoption, they can, put something in the chat there. And so we're so connected, and we can jump in and help each other immediately. So no one feels alone, because that's the worst part, is feeling alone in this. And just giving them wins, setting them up with challenges, and working towards those wins. It's such a team building thing. I just let my staff throw 16 pies in my face because we reached.
I love this thing you all are doing. I keep seeing you all getting pied in the face.
Yeah, I sent out a challenge and said, for every 10 positive outcomes, I will take a pie to the face. And I know Monica Pima did the same thing. And
several other directors. Is this your idea? Because it's spreading all over.
Yeah, it was a random idea that I had, and I made a Facebook post and tagged Monica, and it just
sounds like the next pedigree toolkit is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
The advocates might really enjoy that.
The staff loved it, and the staff loved asking me, how many pies am I up to now? And how okay, so if we get out 3 more dogs, you'll take another pie in the face. Okay. And they were just so energized. But on the flip side, when they were coming to me with the pie, they were like, I'm so sorry. So it's this wonderful just community that we've established with each other. And that's huge. That's huge.
And I want to turn to Michelle and Mira, but I want to say really quickly that you really schooled me without meaning to. A few months back, there are these shelters that have closed their doors. I was living in Austin at the time, and they were coming to Misty with animals. And my first reaction is tell them no, don't take them in. It's not your problem. And it struck me how much the industry has been built around not my backyard, not my problem. And Misty was like, no, we're going to do the right thing for this animal. And I think that ethic is something we're going to have to really embrace as an industry, because this idea, if it's not my jurisdiction, it's not my problem, is really kind of at the heart of the issue. And the last thing I'll say about that is there is no time in our history in our recent history that there have been more animals in the United States in need of homes than there have been kennels available to those animals. But because we have this looking in myopic, my backyard only, we don't see how we could solve the bigger problem. So Mira and Michelle, what are your thoughts?
I just wanted to comment on something that Misty said, because I think keeping the staff super positive is really important, and it carries over to volunteers as well. So when we started Lucky Dog, I came from another foster-based organization that used to email to their volunteer list, everyday euthanasia list from all over the area. And there was nothing I could, as a random volunteer, like I couldn't do anything about that. And it was really depressing. So at Lucky Dog, we don't share the euthanasia list like that, but B, we send out any adoption that happens on a Monday through a Thursday. The adoption counselor sends out a special email with pictures just about that animal. And then because we have so many Friday to Sunday, we compile a list and send that out. And then we post on social media the week's adoptions. And it's really great for morale for our volunteers because, I mean, they're putting in so many hours as it is. And it's also really great because a lot of our source shelters watched for the Sunday email. And so the fosters from Texas or the fosters from South Carolina or the shelter staff that watch those animals see their name on the adopted list as well. And so I think that just maintaining that really positive and focusing on the wins is critical for staff, but I think it's really important for the volunteers in the community as well.
Morale for us, what we do, we have a lot of things that we do. One of the key components is our fundraising arm, Friends of Human Animal Care Center. We budget with them a amount of money that we get to do something all year with for the staff. And that, I'm sorry, that includes numerous shout outs on our pages that are just staff pages, that are just volunteer pages. We, make sure that if we have staff that are specific in training a certain breed and they got that long stay dog out because they use their skills, that is a large shout out. We give kudos. We have, sometimes catering coming in for it. So it's just a large amount of things. And then within the departments, those managers also do stuff for their departments. So we do it as a whole and then as an individual. And then the most important thing is when there is tech week, when there's veterinary assistant week, when there's animal control week, we make sure that we are doing stuff for that team and giving them shout outs and basically making sure all the rest of the team know this is what they do all year round and giving those stories that, the lives they've saved, the cases they've been on. And so we make sure everyone knows what everyone else is doing, but in large shout outs.
I really love what you're all saying, because so much of our emphasis around staff, especially over the last couple of years, so it's been around compassion fatigue and trauma. And it almost, while it's really important to recognize the human pain that's caused when you're dealing with life and death on a daily basis, I love that you're all talking about celebrating the positive, because it's almost like I feel like we've created kind of this suck of you're sad, right? You have compassion fatigue, right? And you're all talking about something that's really, really different. And I wonder, because you're also successful, if there's maybe a lesson there for everyone about how we need to start thinking about staff who are pretty fresh coming into this field. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I talk to folks about the negative bias, which is, things that happen to you negatively are going to hold a stronger place in your brain. And so we have to fight that. And the more we celebrate, the more we're fighting that negative bias, because we are hitting some really amazing celebrations. And so that's something that we as humans have to train ourselves. Yeah. We're born with negative bias. We got to train ourselves to celebrate. And so I think that is a big part of how I help with burnout. You know, compassion fatigue, that's kind of an individual journey. Burnout's my responsibility. I'm responsible for helping my staff go through their day-to-day process, and even mentally learning, you know, how they can look at different situations. That makes them a stronger person.
Yeah.
I also
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I find also with this newer generation of folks that we're hiring, it teaching them it's okay to ask for help and to ask questions seems to be something that they're just not as comfortable with. And so I try to tell them, like, I would love for you to ask every question at least once, right? Every single question. And you're going to feel so much better about it. We're going to be able to save you time. You're going to be more efficient. Don't try to reinvent the wheel, because I don't know all the things that I've been doing so long I don't think about, but you don't know them. And so I would much rather you ask me a million questions in your first 2 months. You are never going to bother me. And let's get you set up on the right path. And that's really giving them that permission to ask the questions and have them feel like they're not bothering you. Like, it's really not a bother. Text me and I will answer.
For me, it's almost a mission for me. I've been here 19 years. So when I first started, it was that whole, we're going to euthanize as many as we can, as fast as we can. And no one ever asked if I was okay. No one ever checked on us. There was no kudos for things that we were doing that were positive. And so I now, living through all of that, realize that this new staff may have not gone through that, but they're going through a different kind of trauma that I went through, totally different, but they need to be made sure that they are okay. We ask if they're okay. We, even if it's stopping by into their offices and asking, do you need help with anything? I got like 30 minutes. I can help you with whatever you need. Making sure that you're available for them and that they know that they can walk into your office at any time. And I wish that I had that when I started. But that's what the mission is now for me, is to make sure that I give them what I didn't receive. Because I'm really hoping that later on, if they're still here in 20 years, they don't have that outlook and that all that is just engraved in you. I'm hoping they don't have that.
I like the fact that we never talk about kitten fatigue, right? Like, we could have 15 kittens come in one day, and then all of a sudden one more kitten comes in, and everybody loses their mind like they have never seen a kitten before. And I absolutely love that, and that's where the focus should be. But I know when we talk about compassion fatigue, so often it does go back to euthanasia, which is part of our industry. And I don't think it's healthy not to talk about it. We make sure every staff person, every intern, or every volunteer, before they are onboarded, we have a conversation about euthanasia at our organization, in the industry at large, what it means. And we ask them, have they ever had an animal that they had to say goodbye to? So we go through all of that to make sure that there's just an open dialogue. And in the event that there is a euthanasia, we communicate out why, what happened. So there's a lot of trust, and tell people it's okay to feel sad. It's okay, not to be okay about it. But we also have another 100 animals that are waiting for love, that don't have those same issues, that are perfectly great companion animals that need attention, that are going to go home. So trying to maintain a little balance between the conversation and one of the harder parts of our industry. But there's so much joy and love in our industry too, and we can't discount that because of these feelings for the tough cases.
I think that's right. And I think one of the things that can be hard, especially in a really heavily volunteer organization when it comes to euthanasia, is the volunteers. I think sometimes the staff really feels like they just don't want to tell the volunteers. They don't want to have to explain if we've had to make a really difficult decision. And I find that the volunteers really appreciate you having that conversation with them. And that's I think, definitely we have lost some volunteers when we have had to make difficult euthanasia decisions, but we've kept more than we've lost because we've always been really transparent. So I think, again, it's something that applies both to the staff and to the volunteers. You can't run without your volunteers, but they have to understand that sometimes an animal is too sick, too unsafe, too unpredictable. That makes it really hard.
I really love all of this, and it's personally bringing me back to in 1999. I worked at a shelter where I think it was an 85% euthanasia rate, and I was like 20, and we were euthanizing a lot of animals. I think on the day you were assigned, you'd get 80 to 100 animals you'd have to euthanize, and the staff, I was a relatively new employee, and the staff euthanized my favorite dog without telling me. I actually walked in at the end of it, and I had I don't think we called it then, but a nervous breakdown, and physically ran away from that job, and spent really years processing that. And of everything I've been through in animal welfare, not being told and finding that out in that way was the single most traumatic event I've ever experienced. And I really feel for volunteers. Like, I do, and it's hard because there's so much emotion. And as a director, it's like, I don't want to tell people because it is going to be like so much emotional work. And I don't know that we appreciate the leadership enough, like how hard that is. I wonder if we need to be giving people more support around when you are transparent. Like, how do you all hold all of that when you are having to really be transparent about hard things when it comes to dogs?
It's very hard. And, one of the things that I find helps with the volunteer conversation is I wouldn't do this with a staff member necessarily, but especially with the volunteers or the people that have fostered the animal. And I'll say, if it's a behavioral case, like we've made this decision, and they'll fight, they'll advocate against it. And I'll say, look, are you willing to adopt this dog? Because I will give you this dog, and I will hook you up with a trainer, and I will do all these things. But I'm going to tell you right now that I personally am not convinced that the animal is safe. I'm not going to stop you from trying, but I also want to caution you that I'm worried about this. And in 2 of the 3 recent, like in the past year that I've had to have this conversation, or 2 years, I guess, that I've had to have this conversation, 2 of the people have adopted the dog, one of which ultimately euthanized on their own, and one made it work. And one, we euthanized the dog. So I think in my view, if someone is that passionate and is that committed to that animal and wants to take on the risk and the liability and the commitment and know that they can never have guests in their home again because this dog has so much stranger danger, like, that's their choice. And I'm not going to say they can't try it, but I'm also not going to lie to them and say, I think that's a great idea, right? I'm going to make sure they know, I think, I admire your passion. I'm nervous and scared, but if you want to take that on, I'm going to let you.
I really like how you had those 2 outcomes, because I think that's often true. Like, so many times we don't know. And I think we're not talking about the cases where a dog has mauled someone, and there are some really clear-cut cases, but all of us who are working in shelters are dealing with 25% of our dogs are in this weird gray area where they're having behavioral decline, they have some weird history we're not really sure about. And so there are those gray area cases. But I think back to this point about the communication with volunteers, you all are pretty exceptional at that. How do we scale that? Because I think actually if we've lost something in the pandemic, it's what you're talking about now. And why this relates to this webinar is that big dogs are kind of they're losing out, because we're not able to engage the community and volunteers the way we were. And I think that you're really honing in on that in a way that I wonder, how do we change that?
I think we have to meet the volunteers where they are. Like, so many volunteers come in, and if they're engaged with dogs, then they're walking the dogs, they're doing all the in-shelter things. And so I've challenged my staff who are going off to offsite events and such to pick dogs that they know have volunteers that are really attached, and let those volunteers know those dogs are going off site to an adoption event. You should come too. And so using the dog to bring in people to other parts of the organization and other functions of the organization, I think is really powerful and helps them feel like they're there doing what they want, but they're moving in a different place in the organization, if that makes sense.
Yeah, we do something similar to that, but we do it in-house, and it's called Dog of the Day. And so they get assigned a play yard, and we have, different slots, and the advocates for these dogs get to have whatever it is, an hour, 2 hours that you pick in the yard. And it's a high traffic area. So all of the traffic goes right by them all day, every day. So we have a volunteer who is extremely successful at doing this, to the point that she now concentrates on the long stay dogs and the dogs that have, some in kennel behaviors that are not shown outside in this yard. And she's like 12 for 12 right now, and it's great. I mean, they're engaging, they're learning, what the questions communities are asking, what's important to them. And so then she's basing our next dog off of what she's learned from all that communication with the community. And I think that's pretty much why she's successful. She's listening to all those conversations and taking it to heart and making that next decision on what dog to pull forward.
Yeah, and if I can jump in on that, if y'all don't have a yard to do that, we have a bench. And so volunteers are like fighting over this bench right in front of our adoption center to like camp out with their favorite dog. So you can make it work no matter what you got.
And for those of you, the shelters that can get to offsite adoption events, like at your local PetSmarts, Petco's, we have a lot of, smaller private stores that we go to as well. And what we do is we give our volunteers a printed bio of every animal, and let them use it to like market and sell. And what we do, I know there's a lot of discussion on some of the shelter chat boards and things about like what you do with under 18 volunteers. We have them come a 1-to-1 ratio with their parents, and then we make a special point of handing the bio to the child and saying, this is your job. Your job is to to learn this bio and be able to talk to anyone that has any questions about this animal. And I've seen some very impressive young kids like selling up those dogs because they're not allowed to hold the leash. So it's actually turned into this great way to engage the younger kids and give them an active role to play in the adoption events when otherwise they just be standing there with their parents.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
When organizations, so I think if there's one thing that I have seen all over the country this year, it's that organizations feel paralyzed. So I can go in and say, do these 5 things. These are great ideas. And they'll be like, that is a great idea. And we don't have the bandwidth. That bandwidth word comes up over and over. And by that, they mean short staffing, they mean exhaustion, they mean they don't feel like they can have the money, whatever it is. How do you recommend for organizations that bandwidth word keeps, or capacity issue keeps coming up? What do you recommend they do to get unstuck?
So when I come up with an idea that my staff are look at me with cross eyes and are like, are you crazy? We don't have the bandwidth to do that, Mira. I look at them, I'm like, okay, tell me 3 things I can take off your plate right now. And I will do them. And I want you to do this new program. And you know what? Usually I take the 3 things, and then within 3 weeks, they take them back because they're like, wow, you just made my life so much easier. Right? Or I found a volunteer to run this and now I can take my stuff back. So sometimes it's giving them a little bit of ability to create that bandwidth. So they see that it's maybe not as daunting or scary, because it usually seems scary and daunting. And so they assume it's going to be really hard and really time consuming, and they just need that little bit of space. And then it works.
I say, look at your data. Look at your data and what is your what's your biggest outcome program, and just add on to it. Just help that program that's already your most successful program be even more successful. So adoptions are our most successful program. 60% of the animals leave our shelter because of adoptions. It's because of our community. And so what can we do to make those adoptions even more successful? How can we make them more fun? How can we bring folks in? How can we be better at recommending animals? So that doesn't feel as big of a leap if you're already doing the program.
Yeah. I think that it's not grounded in reality often. It's grounded in panic and anxiety and worry and stress. And so I can be at a shelter that has an intake of 1,000 and 100 staff, and their stress level and their feeling is similar to a shelter with a 25,000 intake and a staff of 100. I can't quite make sense of the psychology of it, and I need help understanding, like, what do you think is happening for leadership right now, that or anywhere from supervisors, managers, operations, that this paralysis sets in and they can't move forward? Like, I need to understand, we need to understand it a little better. And I'm looking at Jeffrey thinking and just wondering what you're thinking.
All of us, I mean, the lead organizations, I think we have to do our own sort of self-inventory first, right? What is making us so stressed? And if we can't carve out, half an hour to go sit at a park and be alone and think about where we want to take our organization, then we really are struggling. We're doing ourselves a disservice as well as the organization. So we have to find that time to really think about what we want to do. And I wouldn't recommend someone who is so stretched go start some big community adopt-a-thon. I mean, that is nuts. But you can start somewhere small. If you're friends with the mayor and you happen to know when the mayor's birthday is, all of a sudden you have a dog that's named the exact same name as the mayor and has the exact same birthday. It's amazing how that happens. And you can start with a birthday party. You can start small, but the media will like it. The mayor will like it. It gets attention, and you start somewhere. So what can you do? Not what can't you do? And there are places to start. The other thing is, don't start anything without engaging volunteers. I don't do a single event that doesn't have volunteer leadership. And it means that I can build the idea of a committee where I have a sponsorship chair and a logistics chair and a marketing chair. And I may not fill all of those positions this year, but I can get one of them filled. And then we can start an event, we can do something small, and then next year we can build on that and then build on that. And if you can just keep repeating that, you'd be amazed how quickly you can bring more visibility to the organization and also place more animals in homes.
I love that. You don't start one event without a volunteer. What are you planning for next year? What are you all like? Do you have like a great idea or an event or something that you're looking forward to that you think is going to be really successful?
For us, it's we're kicking off a Spanish language campaign. So it starts at the end of January, and what we're going to do is it's going to be a 3-day event. And we're picking the community that's Spanish speaking zip codes. We're starting off with 2, and those zip codes are are the community that doesn't often come into PAC. 1, because we're quite a distance, and 2, they fear the government. There's that whole stigma, and so we're going to go out to them. And we're going to do it for 3 days. And it's a Friday, Saturday. We're going to do free microchips, and we're going to engage with them. We are going to offer them tags, collars, all those things. And then on the 3rd day, Sunday, we're going to take all the dogs that come from that zip code that are in our shelter and go do an adoption event in that zip code. So we're hoping that people find their dogs, and then it's adoption of it. If it happens to be their dog, it doesn't need to be a return to owner. It can be an adoption as long as that dog is leaving our shelter. And I'm happy that it's going back home. The dog doesn't know if it was adopted or if it was an RTO. It doesn't care. It's happy it's going back home. So we're kicking that off, and I'm excited about that. We've got some local well-known restaurant in our area that is sponsoring that and is going to push that out into their community as well. So we're excited about it.
That's awesome. Who else?
We're going to lean in more on our best match program for the next year. And we've got volunteers excited about it. Speaking of volunteers, we got volunteers excited about it too and want to push it forward more. So what we do is we select dogs who have been good with dogs, who have been good with cats, who have been good with kids, or who we think would do really well in an apartment environment, because those are our most common asked for attributes. And we put them in groups, and we put them in groups on our website. When you walk down to the kennel area, they're displayed there. And so it's really helped. And actually one of my favorite dogs got fostered the other day. Mr. got fostered because he was on the Good with Kids list, and that's what they were looking for. So we're going to really lean into that more heavily this year.
It's like my single favorite program right now. I think it's genius because it's what people are looking for. And so it's a great way to get your big dogs adopted, because people come in looking for potty trained dogs. They come in looking for dogs that have lived with kids. So I put a link in the chat, and it's also in one of our toolkits, but we have all got to lean into that program. It is so smart, Misty, and thank you for leading the way on that. Mira, Jeffrey?
My new goal is to just hang out with Misty, Mira, and Michelle next year. I mean,
Same.
you guys are so smart and so talented. We've been talking a lot about 2024, and we're not planning huge stretch goals or doing too many things new. I think we're determined to try to relive 2023, just do it better. It was a tough year for a lot of different reasons, and we didn't make all of our goals, but we did really good work, and so we're trying to keep the focus there. However, we did do a new event this year called Apocalypse, which was our Halloween event, and it was a one-day adoption event. It was only from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m., so it wasn't a huge lift, but it was stupid fun. I mean, all of the animals that were getting adopted were in costume. The volunteers were in costume, and people it was just fun. It was just fun, and it was really successful, and it cost very little. And so if we do that again next year and make it a little bigger, I'll consider that a huge win.
Apocalypse, so cute.
I think we're also kind of in the boat that Jeffrey's in. I think we don't have huge goals for our adoption foster program. We did open this year an entire rescue campus in Florence County, South Carolina. And so we have some stretch goals for our transport program out of Florence for sure. So hopefully in 2024, Lucky Dog will not be the only receiving rescue for Lucky Dog, South Carolina.
Deb had asked a question in the chat, and I'm curious, like, of all the adoption events you've been part of over all the years, whether it's as a director or in your community, not your shelter, what one like just has not left your mind? And I'm going to start. I want to just offer one share, and mine is thanks to Michelle, which was the Midnight Muttness event. Michelle put it together at PAC, which is a shelter I used to lead, and when we thought about doing an adoption event, I just thought about having to stay awake past 9, and it sounded terrible. And we did it though, and she turned it into a party for the community. We had food trucks. She had an entire room set up for kids with movies and shows and crafts and snacks. She made it. There was a DJ. It was the most fun thing happening in Tucson that night. We got more than 100 dogs adopted in one evening, and we saw people that we never would have seen before. And it really, I think the reason I've never forgotten it is because about 80% of people work 9 to 5 still, even in our gig economy world. So when we're not open in different hours, we're just missing so many opportunities. So I'm curious from you, like, what is your one thing that like sticks out in your head as I'll never forget this one?
To add to that, mine was when I slept in the kennel with the dog. That was
For a week.
So
For a week, yes. And Kristen thought that I had lost my mind.
You kind of did. Michelle had kennel. She experienced decomposition, stress, aggression, and it was really shocking to see how similar her behavior was after that time in a kennel compared to a dog, just the lack of sleep.
Weird. We did an event this last year. Actually, been doing it for several years, but it's called Bark and Meow Around the Block, and it's in partnership with Clear the Shelters. But it's a large adoption event for the community, and the idea being that if the community is coming to adopt a new member of their family, there should be something for the entire family. So there's everything from face painting to a beer garden, right? And live music. But what was most important for me is this last year we were able to bring out and partner with 23 other shelters and rescues that also had the ability to bring their adoptable animals. So we closed down 2 long blocks in Berkeley. And this didn't just happen overnight, right? We all work together. We know each other. We've been building these relationships for years. And so this opportunity to come together and do something just bigger than Berkeley Humane was fantastic. And we were very focused on the animals, and we were happy to get out 150 animals that day from between all the partners. But what struck me was the part that I hadn't been thinking about was that how our community wanted to come to something. People wanted to come back. They wanted to visit with these rescues that they adopted from, but never really get a chance to see in the community, or to Berkeley Humane and bring dogs that they adopted during the pandemic or years ago. So it became this almost like a homecoming kind of big, just love fest. And it was really powerful on so many different levels. So we are already working on it for next year. So that's the great benefit of having a successful event is working on it again. But I'm really looking forward to it, and I think it's good for us and good for the community.
I think Mira is still frozen, but we'll see if we get her back. You all, there were a couple questions about in the chat about the dog. What do you call it? The dog for a day? What is it called,
Yeah.
Michelle?
Doggy day.
Dog of the day.
Doggy day.
Sorry, dog.
That is the name for a couple of different kinds of programs. So I want to make sure I understand. So in this program, a volunteer takes a dog that's maybe a long stay dog, a senior dog, harder to get adopted, and spends the day in a very public area just marketing that dog. Is that right?
No, so there's a day for Dog of the Day, and there are probably 8 slots. They take up a slot, which is anywhere from an hour to 2 hours. So we have dogs that could be 5. There are 5 different dogs in that Dog of the Day throughout that day.
Okay, so you can feature multiple dogs throughout the day.
Yes.
And so, but this is a chance for basically somebody that's really good at communicating to
Yes.
give special attention to that dog.
Absolutely.
Okay, got it. And I think people are wondering, I'm not sure what questions had. It says, do people just interact with the dog while they're out in the play yard, or do you have a list of things that are done for that dog throughout the day?
So they get to come into the yard and interact with the dog. The dog gets to show off tricks if they have any tricks. It's communication, it's interaction, it's building a relationship. And if that community member happens to not take that dog, at least it gives that volunteer information about what they're looking for, and they could absolutely give other dog recommendations. So, hey, Fred in 133, that I think that's the dog you're looking for. So it's not only about that dog that's in that yard, it's about finding out what the community wants and then pointing them into the right direction.
That's awesome. And it's Amber, who you've been awesome in the chat, Amber, said that they did Dog of the Day live on Facebook and Instagram, which is such a great idea too, to get more attention to that dog. And Mira, you didn't get a chance to say that one event that really has stuck out in your memory.
sorry about that. We lost our internet here in South Carolina for a moment. But we had an event in January of this year. We do regular Sunday adoption events. They're 3 hours long. And we did 75 adoptions in those 3 hours. And I don't think I've ever felt more busy, more tired, and more excited at the end of 3 hours than I did at that particular adoption event. So I don't know what it was in the sky and in the environment that day, but it was really great.
Well, we are so grateful to you all. I do probably 25 webinars a year, and this is one of the best, most interesting hour and 20 minutes I've spent. I have learned so much from you all. And cannot thank you enough for your time. And we're going to make sure there's a link to this webinar. And a lot of folks weren't able to attend it live, but we'll make sure that there's a link so you all can share it as well, because everybody should see the wisdom of the four of you, exceptional leaders. And we're really, really grateful for you being here. And to everybody that has attended, thank you as well. I think our collective message for you is like, we're all here. And those of us that have been doing this longer, we are a phone call or an email away, and you'll see our emails are all right there. You can reach out to us. Every one of these folks is going to help you if you need it, or you just want to pick their brains on something. So Deb and Meg, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Thanks, Kristen. I just want to echo, and just on behalf of the foundation and Deb and myself, and just say thanks for your time. I love you guys. I could hug you. I feel like you just got so much knowledge, and I just appreciate you taking the time to share it with others. And thank you for letting them contact you if needed. We will have both toolkits out on our website, Pedigree Foundation website. We'll also have this recording out on that website, and then we'll also send the recording out to anyone that registered. Okay. And just once again, thank you all for attending, and thank you, panelists and hosts, for being extraordinary. Have a great week.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.